Welcome to the Crowds Line College Football Show, featuring Coach Lou Holtz and Mark May. Every week, you can predict the winner, the score, and compete against the crowd for prizes. Sign up on the Crowds Line app or by going to thecrowdsline.com.
Moderating for Coach Lou Holtz and Mark May is not an easy task. Knowing this, the Crowds Line decided to send in the Marines. I'd like to introduce myself as your moderator. My name is Kevin Trimble, and less than a year ago, I retired after a 23-year career as a United States Marine. I strongly believe that playing football as a young man from grade school all the way through college formed a foundation from which I was able to serve in uniform for the past 2 decades. Teamwork, trust, character, and even having a little thick skin are lessons that I hope to carry forward from my last career into this role as we inform you and entertain you in the world of college football. This show will recognize our servicemen and women and our veterans at every opportunity as we reach out to the millions of you at home, and more importantly, as we reach out to those service members currently standing a post overseas so that we can all enjoy this great game called college football. Now, without further ado, let's talk some college football for this week. Let's get to the task at hand and let's talk about college football. Coach, Mark, week 1 was an exciting week. We had some upsets. I want to bring it in first. We've got near and dear to Mark's heart and Coach's heart is Michigan at South Bend. Coach, tell us about that weekend. Tell us about that game, please.
Oh, it was just a wonderful weekend. They celebrated our national championship team of '88. Lou's lads came back. There was so much enthusiasm on the campus. I entertained Laura Ingram. It was just wonderful. And the great thing about it, we knew that Notre Dame would win big. It's always great when you know what the outcome of the game's going to be. And the enthusiasm, excitement, it's nothing like Notre Dame when they win.
I have to congratulate you, Coach. That was a heck of a win by Notre Dame. They did a terrific job. But what was surprising in that game, your quarterback, Brandon Winbush, still has difficulty completing passes. He was 12 for 22, 54% in that game. Last year, he only completed 49% of his passes. And for Michigan, what's the matter with your guy, Jim Harbaugh? What's his problem? He's got a good quarterback in Shea Patterson, can't get it done. He's got a problem of, you know what, trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. This is why. He's got a mobile quarterback that can run outside the pocket, run RPOs, and put the ball down the field vertically, but he still continues to be hard-headed and goes to his pro-style office because that's what he coaches.
Mark, just because you burned down the neighbor's house doesn't make your house any better. Give Notre Dame credit. They were a superior team. We'll find out how good Michigan is in the future.
Well, upset for some, done deal for others, namely Coach. We'll see how that goes later on this season. Hey, let's talk about Auburn, Washington, in Atlanta. Mark, I mean, you call Washington. You have them in your Final Four. Tell us about that game.
Hey, I'm still on the Washington bandwagon, and the reason why, the way that they played on the road, it was a true home game for Auburn. All they had to do was travel, 100 miles to get to Georgia to play their game. 99% of the crowd were Auburn fans. And I didn't know that the left tackle for Washington, an All-American, was not going to make the trip. But they fought hard. They played well. They didn't play well early. They were a little nervous, but they kept in the game. And I think for Chris Peterson, their head coach, and for that staff, they did a terrific job. And this is a quality loss, Coach.
I tell you what, boy, you put spin on it. Unbelievable, Mark. The fact is, Auburn was one of your teams in the Final Four. They already are 0-1. Let's give credit to Auburn.
Well, Coach, you look at that upset there. You called that one. How about the one that neither one of you all called, Maryland over Texas in College Park? Mark, what do you think? It was emotion on both sides. What do you think about that result to where this sits for Tom Herman?
I think there's emotion on both sides. I think that if you look at Maryland, they played extremely hard under Matt Canada, the interim coach. They got together and they rallied extremely hard in that game. It was an emotional game for them. But the bottom line is they've got Texas's number. In the last 2 years, they put up 85 points on that Texas defense. I think when you look at Harmon, the head coach, you're watching a coach that's overrated. Everyone says what a great job he did at Houston, and he did. But since he's been at Texas, I've been very unimpressed in what he's done at Texas, particularly at the beginning of the season when you need to come out and hit on all cylinders, Coach, and they just couldn't get it done 2 years in a row.
Well, he's been there 14 games. They're now 7-7. What was disappointing was they fell behind 23-7. Then they fought their way back into the football game. But in the fourth quarter, Mark, the quarterback threw 2 interceptions. He has 2 excellent quarterbacks. He only played 1. In addition to that, a veteran running back fumbled the football. You can't turn the football over 3 times in the fourth quarter on the road and expect to win. As Tom Herman said, and I mentioned it last week, Mark, the problem in the first game is coaches try to defend ghosts. The opening game, you don't know what they're going to do, so you put in all kind of offense, defense. Your players get mentally tired, exhausted. They can't be aggressive. And Mark Herman, Coach Herman, even came out and said our players were just wanted to win too much and were too confused.
Well, crazy thought. I think we could all agree. Maybe Coach Herman could learn something from Coach Ed Orgeron down there at LSU. Mark, did you watch that game?
I'll tell you what, Coach O had them rocking and rolling. They finally got a quarterback in Joe Burrow, the Ohio State transfer. And not only that, they finally have a running game. I thought their defense was extremely impressive in that game. If you looked at Miami's offensive line, they were overwhelmed from the first play of the game. No communication on the offensive line. They got their quarterback killed just about in that football game. And the first thing you've got to do is you've got to protect the ball, protect your quarterback, and have a plan. Miami didn't in that game. LSU did, and they were extremely impressive on both sides of the ball. They won the battle of the trenches, Coach.
I said Coach Burrow, I said that Burrow with the quarterback would do an excellent job. I watched him practice at Ohio State. He's very, very accurate, very calm. And there's a reason they pay Coach Aranda $2.5 million to be the defensive coordinator. I mean, their defense was very, very impressive. And I'm sitting there scouting LSU because my son's team plays them in a couple weeks at Baton Rouge. And all I tell Skip, I hope you get enough guaranteed money to pay for hospital bills.
Well, I will tell you, as you said right there, was that an upset? Maybe. What was not an upset was Alabama has a football team, but they also now have a quarterback. Mark, what your thoughts on that game?
I thought both quarterbacks played well for Alabama, particularly Tua. Was exceptional in this game. He had 3 total touchdowns, was very accurate with the football, made plays when he had to out of the pocket, was calm and cool under pressure at times. But this wasn't a close game. They should have stopped this. They should have stopped this like a boxing match and cuts early in the first round because Alabama was too dominant in this football game on offense, on defense, on special teams. It wasn't even close, and they let Louisville get a late score. But I thought Alabama, every year they come out and play a big game early, Coach, and they're extremely prepared no matter who they play. If it's USC, if it's a Big Ten opponent, no matter who they play the first game of the season, Nick Saban has his team ready to roll.
That's why he plays a very strong opponent in the opening game, Mark, because as you know, when you have to be ready in the first game, you have a great winter program, you have a great summer workout, your players know in 2 days, they got to be at their absolute best for the opening game. That was the same thing when we were in Notre Dame and playing Michigan. But I was impressed with Alabama. My secretary said, can anybody beat Alabama? I said, maybe the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm not sure about that, but Tua is so impressive. I know he had a great game in the second half in the national championship game last year, but Mark, he reminded me so much of Lamar Jackson last year. Just won the Heisman 2 years ago. This guy has poise, he has talent, and I've never seen anybody as quick a release and as good a vision as he has, unless maybe it's Justin Fields, a freshman at the University of Georgia. Watch him.
Well, Coach, it'd be tough to agree that they probably could beat the Eagles, but took my family there. The only positive note was Lamar Jackson was there, and my son got his autograph. So victory for the family. Gentlemen, so as we break down your picks from last week, we talked about the college football contest. We had 6 games. You gave us some highlights of those 6 games. And Coach, I'm going to tell you right now, Coach, you picked all 6 games. We talk Alabama, Louisville, FAU, Oklahoma, Miami, LSU, Auburn, Washington, Oregon State, Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame. Coach, you picked all winners. Mark, you picked 3 winners. But, Mark, you got Coach on the spread. So as we look right now, we're going in. Coach is up 6 wins. He's got 6 wins in this contest here. But we then look at how we break the spreads down, and, you know, Coach calls it close, Mark's calls a blowout. So I want to kind of look for Auburn, Washington, we mentioned that, Oregon, Ohio State. And, Mark, what do you think about Oregon-Ohio State? Was that a metric of anything other than take a distraction, a new distraction to not talk about Urban Meyer?
I think when you look at Oregon State, they traveled all the way across the country. They lost their quarterback in the first series of the football game, so they played with a backup quarterback. Here's a team that they still rushed for over 168 yards with one of their running backs. Not only that, the backup quarterback, they put up 31 points on this vaunted Ohio State defense in the shoe with a backup quarterback. Yes, they did give up 77 points, but they got worn down. They gave up 21 points in the last quarter. That's what Ohio State does. They wear you down. They beat you down in the last quarter, and they throw up a bunch of points to make it look totally lopsided. I thought Oregon State went in there with a chip on their shoulder, and they fought hard in this football game. But if you look at Ohio State, they just have too many horses in the stable. And I'll tell you what, it doesn't matter who's playing running back for Ohio State. They got a stable of running backs. They were very impressive on that side of the ball.
Oh, I thought Mike Weber was impressive, and then you look at Haskins and how well he threw. I was disappointed in the way Ohio State played defense. You know, they hired the defense coordinator away from Washington State to come to Ohio State to coach a secondary. They did not play as well. But you have to remember, on defense, they lost an awful lot of good talent, but they still have talent. They're young, they're inexperienced. I think Ohio State will come along on defense. I think under Greg Schiano, the defense will be fine. The offense, there's no doubt how explosive they can be.
Well, gentlemen, we went now to the Rapid 5 contest that you picked. A little bit different. We talk about straight-up winners. Coach, you had 2. Mark, you had 3. So, yeah, and most importantly, the glaring, we talk about Northwestern, Purdue. Give me a breakdown on that, Mark, because you picked Purdue, but Northwestern, came out with a victory.
I thought this was going to be a close game. I knew it would be a close game. I think the key in this game, and the bottom line in this game, is Purdue had 3 interceptions that led to 3 touchdowns for Northwestern. That was the key. Games like this early in the season, we talked about earlier, just any game, you've got to protect the football and you can't turn it over. And if you do turn it over, you've got to get defensive stops. Purdue wasn't able to do that in this football game.
I thought that both teams played 2 quarterbacks. They haven't selected which one is going to be. That creates some inconsistency on your offense. I was very impressed with Purdue. They had a chance to win the game. You don't get a 15-yard penalty late in the game when the other team's getting ready to punt and you just lose your poise on it. But I think Purdue will do very, very well this year. Northwestern, I was impressed with the running back, how well they ran the football. Coach Fitzgerald's teams are always very solid, very well coached. But I don't think either one of them are going to win the Big Ten championship.
Well, and don't forget Trinity High School's own Rondale Moore. More on him later in the show. Boise State, Troy. Mark, you picked Boise big. Coach, not so much. Mark, tell us where that came from.
Because of my former Super Bowl teammate, Mark Rippon. His nephew was Brett Rippon, the quarterback. Last 8 games of the season last year, he didn't throw an interception. And guess what against Troy? 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. When you get good quarterback play, you're in every football game. If you look at Boise State over the years, they've always been competitive, but when they've had solid quarterback play, they're tough to beat. They're my pick out of the group of 5 to possibly get the New Year's 6 this year. There will be the New Year's 6 team.
My problem is that I do not have Alzheimer's yet because I remembered how good Troy looked last year when they beat LSU down there. I mean, they were physical. They won something like 11 football games, but they did have a quarterback named Silver who was a 4-year starter who wasn't playing any longer, and I just thought that Troy would be able to play Boise State. I was very impressed with Boise State. Ripien had an outstanding game. I think he'll have a great year. They may end up breaking into that top 10 that you talk about because they do play a very, very difficult schedule yet. I'm talking about Boise State, but Troy was not the football team that I expected. Once again, I based it on what I saw last year, and I should have.
Well, Texas, Maryland, we mentioned that. Both you all picked Texas. So we'll move on to West Virginia, Tennessee, and Charlotte, 40-14 Mountaineers big. Mark, you picked Tennessee 17-13. I'll give you the first, you can retract that if you want.
Well, I thought that Tennessee would come out and play at least sound defense, and they didn't play sound defense. But this game was close early. It was very close in the first quarter, the second quarter, and halftime. But in the second half, Will Greer just took apart this Tennessee defense. It wasn't even close. They've got great wide receivers, 3 wide receivers that can go vertical down the field. Sills is terrific catching the football, 7 receptions in this game. But Will Greer was absolutely outstanding with the football and his football placement, particularly in the second half, Coach.
Mark, I'm not sure you could pick the winner after the football game with some of your logic on who you picked. Let me say this, that Will Grier is a preseason All-American. He's a transfer from Florida. For years, Florida's had problem in finding a quarterback. But I just thought West Virginia had great speed. I thought with Will Grier quarterback, I think Tennessee will be fine eventually. Right now, they just don't have the talent to skill position. They're not drilled well enough under the coaches' special teams. I think that they will be fine in the future, but right now they're not ready.
Well, gentlemen, last night, Mark, you had Virginia Tech 21-20. Well, it turned out it was Virginia Tech 24-3, and you could call that a blowout. Coach, you picked FSU, but I'll give Mark. You tell us, Mark, what did you see in Virginia Tech early on?
Defense, and more defense. Bud Foster, their defensive coordinator, was exceptional. He always has his teams ready to play. They only have 5 returning starters. It doesn't matter. They find players that can play, and they substitute a lot of players to keep them fresh. A terrific defensive plan, particularly in the red zone. They didn't let Florida State score. Florida State had opportunities to put points on the board, and they didn't. Not only that, they dominated the line of scrimmage. It wasn't even close. And I like the way that his players hustled. There was one play where a running back broke it for about 85 yards down the field of play. They didn't give up on the play, and guess what? Caught the player inside the 10-yard line. Florida State came away with 0 points. That's hustle, that's execution, that's coaching.
I made a serious mistake. I underestimated Bud Foster. He might be as good a defense coordinator as there ever been. They were very aggressive. They controlled the line of scrimmage. I felt that Florida State playing at home, I thought that they would really come out with Willie Taggart's first game. You know, he's averaged like 40 points a game for the last 3 or 4 years. I thought they'd be outstanding. However, you mentioned they did not play well on the goal line. You know, to get down inside the 20-yard line mark and not score, that's like reaching a par 5 in 2. And then 5 putting. Yeah, you made 2 great shots, but you don't have a doggone thing to show for it. And that's exactly what happened at Florida State. Very, very disappointing. And you could tell by the 3rd quarter, the stands were basically empty.
Well, gentlemen, you have these picks, and I'm going to go back, and I'm going to go back every week. We talked about the week 1. We picked your 4 college football playoff teams, your national championship game, your national champion. Coach, you're still alive. Georgia, Clemson, Notre Dame, Wisconsin. Mark, Alabama, Clemson, Michigan State, Washington. Talk to us, Mark.
So you're throwing dirt on me after week 1? There's a long season, Kevin. There's a lot of games to go. You look at Washington, they're going to come back to the Pac-12, and they're probably going to run the table. And they're going to end up with 1 loss. They're going to be conference champions at the end of the season. And if they get that done, because they are the cream of the crop in the Pac-12, they're going to be there at the end of the season. They're going to be one of the last teams standing with 1 loss and a conference championship. If you look at Alabama and Georgia, they're probably going to end up playing each other. One of those teams isn't going to have a conference championship. So I think I'm still alive right now. My other 3 teams have done well. Michigan State did struggle a little bit, but they got the job done against Utah State.
It's amazing, Mark. That's unbelievable. Which will be the marquee win for Washington? Will that be over Arizona or will it be over Colorado?
Oh, Stanford, Oregon.
Well, Mark, I think you're making history because for Washington to run the table, they will be, if I'm not mistaken, they will be the first team in the Pac-12 since the new Pac-12 realignment to go undefeated if they run the table.
Got to be a first to something, Kev.
As well. I'm with you. Well, gentlemen, that wraps up week 1. And with week 1 in the Crowdline College Football Show contest with Lou Holtz and Mark May, we have winners. And, Coach, please tell us who are our top 3 winners of the College Football Show contest.
Oh, I'm happy to report that Brenda Barksdale. Brenda, congratulations. You win $250 Amazon gift card. In second place is Michael Lowry. Congratulations, him. You win a $100 Amazon gift card. And Norb Losing, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Congratulations, Norb. You also get a $100 Amazon gift card.
Well, Mark, that leaves you with the rapid 5 winners because they want nothing more than to hear you call their name, even if maybe they didn't put their full name on their entry level. Let's hear it, Mark.
Number 1 is Willie Pope. He won a $250 Amazon gift card. Congratulations, Willie. Jackson Sears was in second place. He wins a $100 Amazon gift card. And Jonathan Mark was in third place. He also wins a $100 Amazon gift card. Congratulations, y'all.
All right. Well, gentlemen, that brings us to what we're really here for in week 2. Week 2 of college football, there's some really good games and maybe not so much. As Coach often says, they're going to prep before they go into conference play. But I want to lead us into our college football show contest. We got 4 games this week, and I'm going to tell you who they are up front. We have Clemson at Texas A&M, USC at Stanford, Georgia at South Carolina, and Penn State at Pitt. So to lead us off, Clemson is going to College Station. Jimbo Fisher against Dabo Swinney. They're 4-4 head-to-head. See where this goes. Tell us, Mark, what do you think?
You got to like Clemson in this game because they're highly ranked in the country. They're one of the top 2 best teams in the nation. Not only that, if you look at the last 3 games where Jimbo Fisher faced Dabo Swinney, guess who won? Dabo Swinney won all 3 of them. And not only that, they've got 2 quarterbacks, and Trevor Lawrence and Kelly Bryant doing a terrific job with the football. Their defensive front line is the best in college football. Their defensive coordinator, Brent Venables, does a terrific job with them. And I kind of like Texas A&M a little bit, putting some points on the board. But you look who they played, Northwestern State last week. Come on, Jimbo. I got Texas A&M losing to Clemson, 44-21.
I got to go with Clemson also, 31-21. Although I was impressed with what Texas A&M did. The problem with A&M, and I've taken Arkansas there, it's a great place to play. It's a great environment. Whether you're the visiting team, home team, there's so much excitement with the cadets, etc. But Clemson's defense, I agree with, is absolutely outstanding. But here's the amazing thing. Dabo Swinney said he's going to play 2 quarterbacks. You know, Kelly Bryant is a good runner. He was a starter last year, but he also is going to play Trevor Lawrence, the true freshman who said he's a tremendous talent. So the fact that they're going to play 2 quarterbacks, that tells me, Mark, maybe Trevor Lawrence might be the guy for them in the future. Defensively, their front 4 is absolutely outstanding. And I agree with you about Brent Venables, but Clemson will win the football game, but it will not be easy. 31-21.
31-21. Well, gentlemen, you've been there, Coach. You told me earlier. Going into Kyle Field is not easy. We've done a Bolo report for E. King Gill's great-grandson in case they need him standing to be ready to go in when called upon, but we couldn't find them. But we have some folks that would disagree with both of you also. Those in the studio are going to show you, hand you a little video of our friends from the Corps Cadets, and they disagree with both Coach and Mark.
Howdy from Maryland! Coach, Mark, we heard your picks, and we just want to let you know that the 12th man will be over 100,000 strong in Kyle Field this Saturday, watching A&M beat the hell out of Clemson! Woo!
I would say this. They need the 12th man on the field at all times. I don't think they beat them with 11. But I got to tell you, you get down to that stadium and they start playing that hymn and the fans start rocking back and forth. It feels like the stadium is it is one of the greatest places you could go play a game.
It's an outstanding place for atmosphere, Coach. I'll give you that. But when was the last time Texas A&M won a big signature game? That's when Johnny Manziel was playing there, and they beat Alabama. Under Jimbo Fisher, they got to win a big game for me to be convinced Texas A&M is a player again in the SEC.
Well,
big game, big venue.
The fact that they cannot ascertain who's their quarterback, they play in 2, Mond, et cetera. So until they settle on that, I think they're going to have some trouble.
Well, big game, big venue as we see in Kyle Field. Lots of visitors going down there, so they're busy getting ready. USC Stanford, Pac-12, big game. True freshman quarterback at USC, Stanford, strong. UNLV beat, or USC beat UNLV. Stanford played San Diego State and won, but that's a tough team. Mark, what do you think?
Well, if you look at this game, if you look at USC, they held UNLV last week to just 80 yards rushing. If you look at Stanford, they only had 50 yards rushing on offense, with Bryce Love having over 2,000 yards last year, having only 29 yards in this game, the fewest he's ever had in the game, and the 3rd fewest games rushing for Stanford that they've had in the last 8 years. And in those 8 years, 10 games, or the 12 games that they won under 100 yards rushing, they've only won 2 of those games. They've got to run the football for David Shaw. And not only that, is that the blueprint? San Diego State put 8, 9 guys in the box to stop them. But what happened in that game is they were able to go over the top and throw the ball vertically and win the football game and win convincingly. I still like Stanford. They're playing on the farm. I like Stanford to beat USC in this game, 21-17. I think Bryce Love will have a much better game this week than he did last week.
Well, I would imagine so. He's a great player. You know, he's the leading Heisman candidate. As you mentioned, he averaged 1.8 yards per rush on something like 18 different carries. I agree with him about Costello. The fact it is at Stanford, that makes it hesitant for me to pick USC, but that's exactly who I'm going to pick by score 27-24. He started a true freshman at Southern Cal against UNLV, a guy named J.T. Daniels. He had an outstanding game. He's a very, very talented individual. And the one thing that people forget, there were two teams last year that had 46 sacks on the quarterback. One of them was Clemson. The other one was Southern Cal. I think that their ability to run the football, I think that they will play very, very well. And I look for it to be a close football game. Turnovers will be critical, but I just think that you have two good quarterbacks. I love Costello as a sophomore quarterback, but I also think that J.T. Daniels is going to prove to be one of the best ones in the country.
Well, probably two of the best in the Pac-12, as we see. Georgia, South Carolina, big game, SEC. Two quarterbacks in Georgia. Coach, you brought this up earlier. Does the Austin Peay, is that a litmus test for anything? Is the Coastal Carolina, does that show us anything about the future? But, Mark, what's your take on Georgia at South Carolina?
Well, Georgia's going to beat South Carolina. Will Muschamp's done a terrific job at South Carolina, particularly the second half of the season last year. But Georgia's going to win this game 31-20, and this is the reason why. Their quarterback play. Yes, they do have two quarterbacks, but remember last year, Jake Fromm came off the bench, led Georgia to a national championship game. He's got experience, even though he's a young quarterback, but he knows how to play in big games and get the job done. And if you look at Georgia's defense under Kirby Smart, no matter who's playing defense, they're always going to be stout because he's a terrific defensive mind. I still like Georgia in this game to beat South Carolina, your old Gamecocks coach, 31-20.
I coach in this football game. I'm going to tell you, Mark, Georgia and South Carolina is going to be a close football game each and every year. Doesn't matter what your records are. Doesn't matter what the prognostication is. I really want to pick South Carolina, but I can't because I have Georgia in the Final Four. That wouldn't be very, very smart. But I'll tell you what I really like about Georgia. You know, they have much talent coming back. They're a very good football team. You mentioned Jake Fromm. But I want to tell you, Mark, in the spring game, I saw a young man by the name of Justin Fields. He was the #1 recruited quarterback in the country last year. He is special. He completed 7 out of 8 passes, 1 touchdown. Now, granted, Jake Fromm completed 12 out of 16. But in this, Justin Fields ran 3 times, I think, for 33 yards. So I think if they play both of them before this year's over, I think Justin Fields will be the quarterback. And that's nothing against Jake Fromm. You know, 2 years ago, they had a freshman quarterback at Georgia named Easton. His father played for him at the University of Notre Dame. Then he got injured, and in comes Jake Fromm. He ends up playing all year. Now they have another freshman I think is really special. It could be hard to keep him on the bench.
Well, Coach, there's a lot of good quarterbacks down there. Jake Bentley, as we said, is something else coming up. And more importantly, Columbia. You know Columbia well, Coach. That is not an easy place to play nowadays. So we're going to look at
it isn't, particularly when you have to play Georgia. I'll tell you that.
That is right. What I want to do now, and Coach, I'm going to go with you first on this one because I want to give Mark time to compose himself because he might get a little, teared up here. But the Penn State Nittany Lions are going to Pitt. And Penn State is, coming off an overtime win against Appalachian State. And, let's talk about it. Appalachian State was in the big house about 10 years ago and pretty much almost did the same thing. So, Coach, what do you think Penn State at Pitt on Saturday?
Well, 10 years ago, Appalachian State beat Michigan. They have not been a ranked team since that. I thought that they played very, very well. Penn State returns, I think, 9 starters on offense. They do have a good quarterback in McSorley. I really like him, and he played an outstanding game and really led them to victory, even though it was in overtime. But I just don't see any way in this world that Pitt can beat Penn State. I know the game is at Pitt. I understand that. But, a 33-7 over Albany, that isn't real impressive when you really look at it. But many times a football team has to be lucky early in the year. And you can't evaluate a football team completely predicated on one game. I remember one year we got beat by Northwestern in our opening game, and everybody was ready to lynch me, not in effigy, I'm talking about. And Northwestern went on, won the Big Ten. I think we ended up 10-1 that year. So you really can't tell.
Well, I'll tell you this.
Mark.
I can tell who's going to win this game because I played this game multiple times.
Excuse me, Mark. I forgot to give my score. I think Pitt is really going to be fired up and make this. They're going to play a great game. Penn State will only beat them 42-14.
42-14. I'll take that action all day long. You tend to forget this. I'm going to give you a little facts in this situation. Last time Penn State was in Pittsburgh and played the Panthers, they lost. They were upset in that game and lost. Not only that, if you look at last year, yes, Penn State was a great team, but after that game, their head coach, James Franklin, you know what he said about this rivalry? Guess what? It's no big deal playing Pitt. It's like playing Akron. You think that any of those players and head coach Pat Narduzzi forgot that? Pitt's going to win this game. Kenny Prickett's the quarterback, has done a terrific job. 3 touchdowns last week against Albany. Played big last year when they put him in a game as a young freshman. They're going to get the job done 28-24. And remember this, no Saquon Barkley to save him this year. They only had 2 returning starters on defense, coach, just 2. That's why App State had them 10-10 at halftime. App State scored 21 points in the fourth quarter to tie it up and take it to overtime. Pitt ain't no App State.
Well, Pat Narduzzi in his 4th year, coach, is he's 1-1 against Penn State, the in-state rival.
28-24,
Gentlemen,
Panthers.
there you have the college football contest, and we're going to move on to our Rapid 5. And the Rapid 5, as we talked before, I'm going to give you 2 teams. Just give me a little bit, not a big breakdown, just give me a little bit. Tell me your winner and tell me your score. And for those out there that are tracking this, we'll see how they do against Coach and Mark in the Rapid 5. First game, Mark, Michigan State at Arizona State.
Got to pick Michigan State. I still think they're a team that's going to get to the playoff and win the Big Ten this year. They didn't play well in their first game against Utah State. They'll get better in this game. Arizona State's extremely improved. Only gave up 2 yards rushing against UTSA last week. It'll be close. Arizona State loses to Michigan State 37-34.
Coach.
I have to agree with you, but I have a 31-28. And, you know, of all the coaches in the Pac-12 playing their first game, not many of them had very much success, but I was impressed with Arizona State.
Well, our next one here is Kentucky at Florida. We're talking 0 for the last 31 for the Wildcats. Last year, 1-point game. 1-point game last year, but they're still 0 for the last 31.
Well, I think that Notre Dame beat Navy 44 straight times, so they still have another 12 years to go to get close to that. But I think that Florida wins 45-14, and I was very, very impressed with Florida last week. I thought Franks, the quarterback, did an outstanding job, and I agree with you. Mullins really has them rolling right now.
Well, Coach, we have it from our inside sources in Lexington that last year's 1-point game was a little close, but they have made some major changes. They have learned to count to 11 now, and they understand when there is an offensive player split out wide toward the sidelines, somebody on defense should be in front of them. I think they've got it all figured out. Kentucky has a chance. And I'll tell you what, who else thinks Kentucky has a chance is Kentucky legend Rex Chapman. He's got a little video to show you if you haven't seen that yet.
All right, guys, Rex Chapman here. Crowds line, Kentucky at Florida. Next week, Kentucky wins 3-2. No, not a field goal and a safety. 14-13, Kentucky. Go Cats.
Rex, I think you need to stick to basketball. The last time Kentucky beat Florida, I was still playing in the NFL, and that was 31 years ago. Good luck, Bill. Kentucky's going to lose to Florida 41-23.
He sounds like a comedian out of work.
Well, hey, Coach, as you know, comedian out of work, let's focus on basketball in the Commonwealth. Gentlemen, the number 3 game in our Rapid 5 is Arizona at Houston. Arizona coming off a loss to BYU. Khalil Tate, probably considered early this season, might be the best offensive player in college football, going against definitely the best defensive player in college football in Houston's Ed Oliver. Mark, what do you have about this game in Houston?
Going with the home team, if you look at what Houston did last week against Rice, 45-27, pretty impressive by Major Applewhite. He's done a terrific job as a coach there. But my question is, what is going on at Arizona? Kevin Sumlin, you've got a terrific quarterback in Khalil Tate. Let Khalil Tate be Khalil Tate. Stop trying to make him a pocket quarterback passer. He is a multiple quarterback, can run and can pass. He averaged 1.8 yards per carry against Brigham Young's defense. Last year, he averaged over 9 yards per carry. Let him run the football. The wide receivers did a terrible job in catching the football. If Khalil Tate can run the football, they've got a chance in this game, but I don't think so. I think Houston hangs on to win 27-21.
I look for Arizona to win this football game by a score of 45-35. I agree with you about Khalil Tate. They have back, I think it was 8 starters on offense, 9 starters on defense. Arizona was picked to finish 3rd behind USC and Utah. They did not play very well. They will bounce back even though it's on the road. 45-35, Arizona.
Mississippi State, Kansas State coming up. Mitch Fitzgerald is back, going to Kansas State, who had a tough one at South Dakota last week. They got it by. Maybe they were thinking ahead. Mark, Mississippi State at Kansas State.
I like Mississippi State in this game. Joe Moorhead, the head coach, was at Penn State last year. What a terrific offensive mind. Did a terrific job in their first game with a backup quarterback, putting tons of points on the board. I like Mississippi State in this game, and I like them big over Kansas State, 42-16.
I think it's going to be a little bit closer than that, Mark. I like Mississippi State as well. Nick, the quarterback, Fitzgerald, will be coming back. He has been out. He was suspended last week. He is a Heisman candidate. I think he's outstanding. I look for a 31-21. Do not underestimate Coach Snyder and Kansas State. They beat a very good San Diego State team. I know they're Division I AA, but I'll tell you, they're a very solid team. Coach Snyder will have his team ready. They'll play very well. Not only that, Mark, he's got a quarterback that can't throw the ball particularly well, but he can run it. And that dual threat will make it much closer than you anticipate.
Well, Kansas State, I think Mississippi State will be a little tougher than South Dakota. But as Coach said, Caton Thompson, backup quarterback, 364 yards for Mississippi State last week. We'll hear more about him later. Air Force FAU, we want to shout out to our armed forces. Air Force the Falcons from Colorado Springs are going down to Boca to tangle with some wounded owls. Mark, your thoughts?
I like Air Force in this game. They beat Stony Brook 38-0 last week. Yes, it wasn't a great opponent, but the bottom line is they were smart defensively and didn't give up any points. Here's the key. FAU's got to be licking their wounds after being toasted for 63 on the road, and it could have been a lot more at Oklahoma. They've gone 0-4 against their last FBS opponents between this year and last year. Here's another one. They're going to lose this game to Air Force 31-20.
Well, I was disappointed in FAU's performance. You know, they had 10 starters coming back on defense. They won their last 8 games. They were so impressive, but they lost their coordinator, Lane Kiffin. Brother Chris Kiffin left as a defense coordinator. They did not play well. Last year, when FAU played a service academy, they played Navy, the Wishbone. Triple option, just like Air Force. They gave up 42 points. I look for Air Force to win the game 34-17. And not only that, they can't throw the ball. They threw for 28 yards in their opening game, but they can real run it.
Well, who needs to pass the ball when you can just run it, Coach? And Air Force ran for 333. So there you have the college football contest, 4 big games. Then you have the rapid 5, and you have it from our experts. Who's going to win and what's the score? What I want to bring us to now is my last profession. We have a term called an Attaboy. And an Attaboy is an informal expression of encouragement, admiration, typically given to a young man or a boy. And so what we're going to do this week is go to the Attaboys. Coach, you've got 2. Mark, you've got 2. Who's your Attaboy this week for week 1 of college football? Mark, let's start with you.
Well,
who do you
my
have?
first Attaboy, Kevin, is the entire coaching staff for the Maryland Terrapins and their interim head coach, Matt Canada. With the death of Jordan McNair and all the other issues surrounding this program, he was able to get this team rallied around and stay focused and beat Texas, a ranked team at home, a team that they were underdog to. Attaboy, Matt, the rest of the coaching staff, and the football team of the Maryland Terrapins. My second one, true freshman, 5'8". He runs a 4.3 40, blazing speed. Rondale Moore. How come Louisville couldn't keep him in the state of Kentucky, Kevin? For Purdue, he had 313 total all-purpose yards in his first game, and that broke the record at Purdue for all-purpose yards in his first football game. Congratulations, freshman Rondale Moore.
Well, those are 2 great picks, Mark. I was so impressed with Maryland's win, but I agree with you about Moore. He reminded me of Tim Brown, Rocket Ishmael, etc. He could turn out the light and get in bed before it got dark, and he played tennis by himself, so that's impressive. But let me tell you who mine is. Mine is Cole Murray, place kicker for LSU. A year ago, he was kicking for Assumption. I saw in front of 1,500 people. He graduated, transferred to LSU, 4 for 4 field goals, a 53-yarder, and scored 15 points. He was impressed because last year LSU had all kind of problems. My other one is Keaton Thompson. You mentioned him, the backup quarterback for Nick Fitzgerald. He's an outstanding young man, but he came in and threw for 364 yards, 5 touchdowns, and not only that, he ran for 109 yards himself, 473 yards himself. Boy, that's hard to keep on the bench. However, when you have a great quarterback like they have with Nick Fitzgerald, he is going to sit on the bench. But what a great performance by that young man.
I can agree with the second one, Coach, but you can't give it to the first one. I played for the Redskins in the early 80s when Mark Mosley, the kicker, won the MVP in the National Football League, and still today I'm ticked off about it because he's only on the field 1.3 seconds per kick, and that's it.
Hey, Mark, he made a difference in the game. Not only that, I would love to agree with you, Mark, as I've told you this so many times. I'd love to agree with you, but if I did, we'd both be wrong.
Well, Coach Cole Tracy, from the place kicker from LSU, as you said, transfers from Assumption, made quite a difference. Well, gentlemen, that wraps up week 2 of our Crowdsline College Football Show with Lou Holtz and Mark May. Please log into the crowdsline.com, download the Crowdsline app, but compete in the contest. I'm willing to see if people just, who's tracking Mark, who's tracking Coach, and trying to imitate every pick you give them. So until next week, stay tuned, watch the video, share it with your friends, but more importantly, log in, join, and compete against our legends. Gentlemen, it's been a great day. I look forward to another weekend in college football. Thank you.
Always great to be with you, Mark.
You got it,
and
Coach.
with you, Colonel.
From the 30, Johnson out of the shotgun. Dropping back, pressure on, throwing over the middle. Has Williams. 10, 5, touchdown!